I'm joined now by the co-host of Pod Save America, Jon Favreau. Favs, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
So you've had a busy week. You are embroiled in a public feud with the Vice President of the United States. So I'm going to put right here on the screen tweets between your interaction with you and J.D. Vance. So the Vice President had tweeted, "This obsessive attack on law enforcement, particularly ICE, must stop. I'm praying for everyone hurt in this attack and their families." And of course, that was community noted with a note that says, according to ICE, the 3 individuals shot were ICE detainees, not those, not ICE agents themselves. So you tweeted to him, "The Vice President is not a reliable source of information. This is now the 5th or 6th time he's posted a political take contradicted by facts from his own law enforcement agencies." To which the Vice President, second in line to the presidency, tweeted at you, "The gunman had anti-ICE messaging carved on the bullets he used. What precisely did I get wrong, dipshit?" So I got to ask, first and foremost, what is the immediate aftermath of being attacked by the Vice President like?
First of all, I've been called worse. But also he's second in line to the presidency. Doesn't seem like he has much to do. So the immediate aftermath, it was fine. The way I found out is that one of my friends texted me and said, "Have a good day, John." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then
never a good thing.
And then I looked on Twitter and I was like, "Oh, that asshole."
Yeah.
But the reason that I got into it with him is I think it is very, at best unhelpful, at worst dangerous for government officials, particularly the Vice President of the United States, to come out with political takes before an investigation has even begun.
Yeah.
The suspect hadn't been identified yet. There was no evidence yet. And it turns out that the suspect who killed himself ended up having messages that were anti-ICE and seemed like that. But we didn't know that at the time. And even now, we don't know the extent of his motives. And then J.D. Vance, right after he was tweeting at me, went and gave a speech and called it left-wing violence and blamed Democrats and blamed Gavin Newsom for calling the government authoritarian, for using the word authoritarian, saying that is violent, blamed people for wanting ICE agents to take off their masks so that we didn't have masked agents running around throwing people in vans. And so it really seemed like more of an attempt to silence dissent, to silence critics, and to cripple the opposition, because now they're going after progressive groups, than it did anything else.
Well, there's a small faction on the right that is trying to claim that, like, oh, we're just looking to tamp down the violence that's happening at the hands of the left. But when you come out, as soon as something happens and spread kind of like a incendiary rhetoric, isn't that doing the polar opposite of the thing that you purport to want to be done in the first place?
Yeah, and we can go back and forth on the hypocrisy here, but I think what they're really up to is they have been wanting to go after left-leaning organizations
And just looking for any pretext to be able to
crack
do it.
down on free speech for some time. We know this because, Stephen Miller gave away the game when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He said, "Charlie's last message to me was like, go after those left-wing groups, and we've been working on this for a while." So they've been working on it before the assassination, and now every time there is violence, every time there's political violence, every time there's a shooting, before we even know the facts, they're just using it as another excuse to engage in this government crackdown.
One big element of that is that using an excuse to go after any political group is like a small part of a larger whole. We saw that Trump has been pushing his U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia to go after his political opponents. He tried to get his own appointed U.S. attorney in Eastern Virginia to go after Letitia James. They said there was no basis to actually do a prosecution, and so that person was just fired, and this, again, was U.S. attorney appointed by Trump himself, replaced by someone who was perfectly willing to do Trump's bidding. We have a clip here of Donald Trump being asked about the prospect of subsequent prosecutions. Here's what he had to say.
I'm James Comey. Now that James Comey has been indicted, who is the next person on your list in this retribution?
It's not a list, but I think there'll be others. I mean, they're corrupt. These were corrupt, radical left Democrats. Because Comey essentially was he's worse than a Democrat. I would say the Democrats are better than Comey.
So there's no list. There is just a number of names in a particular order that may or may not have something to do with each other.
Who he has talked about numerous times,
Right.
said that they're guilty. The president of the United States now determines guilt or innocence, determines who will be charged with a crime and who will not be charged with a crime. The other side of the coin here is, Tom Homan, who's running ICE for him, is on a video and recorded taking a $50,000 bribe, but they're not looking into him. So this isn't justice. This is the president gets to decide justice, and that's what happens in authoritarian countries.
Right, and the fact that this is on that point of an authoritarian country, I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, using every instance as a way to kind of amplify the rhetoric and increase like the acrimony in our politics. Like this is where Trump. There are a lot of people that are saying that Trump's job right now is to lower the temperature, but Trump's goal at the end of this is to be an authoritarian, and the way that authoritarianism thrives is expressly by allowing one person to be a demagogue. And so if he brought down the temperature, he wouldn't be able to accomplish his goals. Like, he doesn't want to preside over this country in a democratic way. He views himself as an autocrat, as an authoritarian. And so the way that you do that is by demagoguing your enemies. And so expressly when we have these scenarios where there's violence, the only job for him is to make sure that he can blame the left.
If no one complained and no one opposed him and no one spoke out against him, he'd be fine, right? And everyone could just live their lives normally. But if people start to complain, if people don't like the way he's running the economy, if people don't like what he's doing with ICE, if people have any kind of complaints about his corruption, well, then he's going to use the power of the state to silence you. That's what's going on. And this idea that we can't call the government authoritarian, that means that if you really did have an authoritarian government, they could do whatever they want, because the only thing you're not supposed to do is call it out.
Call out exactly what it is.
Right. And I do think that the government threatening to silence anyone calling them authoritarian is not the most effective way of beating the charge that you're authoritarian.
That's right. To that end, we had a bit of a weird update. So there was a video that swept across the internet of an ICE agent throwing the wife of a detained migrant onto the ground in a facility, in a courthouse, rather. And that ICE agent, we had just found out today, has been let go, he's no longer working for the federal government. And so this was striking because it was one instance where an otherwise completely untouchable agency saw some small modicum of accountability, which I was surprised at, because we've seen so many of these instances happen where there's no accountability, where it's just baked into the cake. Nobody can stand up to these people and nothing ever happens. Why do you think this particular instance was different, where you have an ICE agent who's done something that we've seen countless times in videos that have swept across the internet before, and yet in this instance, that particular ICE agent was let go?
I don't know exactly what happened there. There's a few things that made this somewhat unique. The guy didn't have a mask on, so you could see him, who he was.
Yeah, they gotta fix that. Can't let somebody's identity be. He's assaulting people on behalf of the federal government.
It was quite obvious that the person he assaulted was not even someone that they were trying to detain.
Yeah,
and there was no confusion about who started it. Remember the one where like the guy was like had a weed whacker and he was cutting the lawn, and then they tackled him and tased him, and then they were like, well, he was running at us with the weed whacker first. Like there was no question about what was happening here. But I think however this went down, whether it was internal pressure, whether it was someone who decided to have a modicum of self-dignity and respect and the organization they work at, who the fuck knows. I will say this wouldn't have happened. This person wouldn't have been let go if people weren't filming it. And one thing they are trying to do is to make sure that people can't film what's happening with ICE, right? They are trying to chill not just speech but protest. And so part of all these orders Trump signed this week about cracking down on Antifa and left-wing organizations and left-wing violence, what they really want is they don't want people to show up and protest ICE. They don't want people to film them. They don't want people to know what they're actually doing. And so I think it's a lesson for all of us to keep it up and go out there, be nonviolent, be careful. You don't have to get up in police officers' faces or ICE officers' faces, but you can certainly stand by from a safe distance and film what's going on.
And that's a small part of a larger whole that we've seen thus far, where when people are making their voices heard. We've seen that it's having some impact. I mean, and granted, this is not some new phenomenon where
Right.
like boycotting or protesting is going to have an impact, but it's especially pronounced this week, not just with what we just saw with ICE, but also with the Kimmel situation. There was a major boycott that resulted in Disney opting to bring Kimmel's show back onto the air, which I didn't think, which I'm virtually assured would not have, which I'm virtually certain would not have happened if it wasn't for that boycott, because as it stood, Disney felt like the only downside in this whole scenario was undermining Trump, and they didn't think about the fact that, okay, if there's a flip side to that, which is that our consumers are going to have a say and they're going to cancel en masse. And I wouldn't be I mean, we don't know what the numbers look like in terms of how effective the boycott was, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were tens or hundreds of thousands of cancellations. And so when they felt that pain and the only language they talk is financial, then they say, okay, maybe it's actually worse to kowtow to Trump, to capitulate to Trump, and to leave, you know, our talent twisting in the wind and basically give a big fuck you to our consumer base. But then we just have news as of today that Sinclair announced, and Sinclair is one of the affiliate stations, the affiliate groups that owns these affiliate stations where ABC is broadcast. They announced today, quote, "Over the last week, we've received thoughtful feedback from viewers, advertisers, and community leaders representing a wide range of perspectives. Our decision to preempt this program," meaning Kimmel's program, "was independent of any government interaction or influence, and that they will bring Kimmel's show back onto ABC stations on Friday." And so this is already a right-wing media group. There is a really famous, there's a famous video, I believe Deadspin put it together, of all of the Sinclair broadcasters reading from the same script. This is a right-wing company. And so they outlasted even Disney. Why do you think, if they had the perfect pretext to be able to say, hey, we're never going to put Disney back on the air, even they opted to relent at the end of the day?
I'm sure they had pressure, right? And they're affiliates, and you know, they lose that programming, and they just put something else in there that, you know, maybe they wouldn't get the same ratings. Maybe they felt, you know, public pressure. I also think that in the case of Disney, you know, we don't know what kind of effect a boycott or people canceling their subscriptions may have had. One thing about elites capitulating to Donald Trump is that they're elites and they care about elite opinion, and they care about the media and politics and what they're hearing from even people that they know and their friends and other people in the business community. And I think that matters, you know? And so I think that the more people make their voices heard, sometimes there are economic levers that we can pull, which is like saying, I don't want to subscribe anymore. But it's also just making noise. Like the people who are making these decisions and making them often from a place of cowardice, I think that, you know, bucking them up and letting them know how you feel, it does matter.
Like Bob Iger making his legacy that he capitulated to Trump.
He doesn't want that.
Not once, but like multiple times.
He doesn't like Donald Trump, right? And so he can make business decisions and this and that, but like, yeah, he's thinking about his legacy. He doesn't want this shit.
And also it's worth noting too that I think, I'm curious your thoughts on it, but it feels like these companies are beginning to have some begrudging acceptance of the fact or acknowledgement of the fact that when they negotiate, when they engage in some negotiation with Trump, you don't placate him. Like, you don't satisfy him. ABC News paid him $16 million, I guess in hopes that he would leave them alone. And instead of leaving ABC alone, he basically just smelled blood in the water, attacked them once, realized how weak they are, realized how willing to capitulate they were, realized how easy it was to exploit them, and threatened to do it again publicly after they decided to bring Jimmy Kimmel back onto the air. And so you gain nothing by negotiating with Trump. He is not a good faith negotiating partner. He will roll you the second it becomes politically convenient or financially advantageous for him to do so. And so do you think that there's some acknowledgement from these companies that engage in in deal making with Donald Trump, that it doesn't buy them the thing that they think they're buying?
I certainly hope so. I mean, that was my first reaction when I watched Jimmy's monologue the night he came back. I was like, you know what? We needed this. The country needs to hear someone with a big platform talk about how this guy is not fucking scary, and you can stand up to him, and you can still make fun of him, and nothing's going to happen. And I hope that Jimmy's monologue and even the actions of some other people, like, I hope it's giving people more courage. And also, just courage or not, the recognition that you just said that Donald Trump just wants more control and more power. and he's not going to stop. And so giving in is not going to fix this, and hiding is not going to fix it, because you might think that you will be able to avoid Donald Trump and his reach and the reach of the federal government. But at some point, if we don't stop it, it's coming for everyone. And unless you bend the knee and pledge loyalty to Donald Trump, and even then, he doesn't even take care of his most loyal supporters that well either. So it's uncomfortable, but we all got to fight, and we all got to pay attention, and we all got to get involved, because if we don't, it's going to be a country that we don't want to live in.
Perfect place to leave off. Favs, I appreciate your time. For everybody who's watching right now, if you are not yet subscribed to Pod Save America's YouTube channel, I'm going to put that link right here on the screen, also in the post description. If you're listening on the audio podcast, of course, follow Pod Save America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Favs, appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.